Hello and welcome to the first instalment of Doctor Who Flux Initial Thoughts. This is where, following each episode of Series 13, I'm going to share my thoughts on the episode, the good, the bad, and what I think of the series so far. Today we're going to be discussing last night's episode, The Halloween Apocalypse, written by Chris Chibnall. But before we get into the review, if you haven't already, please support the channel by hitting subscribe and turning on notifications. If you enjoy the video, be sure to give it a like, comment your thoughts on the Halloween Apocalypse below, and you can also find me on Twitter at the link here. Just a quick heads up, I am going to be talking about spoilers. Now, it's difficult to talk about this story as it's been established. This is the first in a 6-part story, and they're very much committing to the serialized format. Certain elements and characters that are established in this episode don't really have much to do here, other than just letting the audience know we exist and we're going to be important in later episodes. And that includes Vinda, Dan's potential love interest Diane, and a character who I won't spoil, but what I will say is they know the Doctor already, and are likely going to be introduced properly in the Weeping Angel story. Why that story in particular? Well, because she also knows what the Weeping Angels are when she's attacked by one and unfortunately sent back in time. We are introduced to the characters of the Swarm, the crystalline creatures, who we all thought were the Master. They are not really explained what or who they are, but we do know that they are in fact prisoners of the Division, so if you were wondering if the Timeless Child, or at least elements of that story, are going to be continued, yes it is. The main focus of this particular episode is the Doctor and Yaz chasing after a dog-like creature known as the Kavista, who seems to be the first in an invasion of Earth, kidnapping the new character Dan. However, it turns out that this is not an invasion at all, but in fact a rescue mission, and Dan, at least for now, isn't particularly special. He is just one of the first humans to be rescued by the Kavista's species, as a mysterious entity known as the Flux is slowly devouring the entire universe, and it's only a matter of time before Earth becomes the next victim. The story is very much incomplete, but that is a design of the serialized format, which I'm going to have to get used to since it's been quite a while since Doctor Who has told these types of stories. It is nice to see that certain elements that I thought would all have to be crammed into episode 1 haven't yet been established and will be spread more evenly across the series. It's hard to tell where we're going to be going or if it'll have a satisfying payoff, but we have a pretty promising start here. In terms of our 3 main characters, the Doctor is pretty good here, though it is kind of frustrating that she's still obsessed with the Division, even though the previous 2 stories kind of suggested that she had made her peace with that, and especially given that she seems to be keeping secrets from Yaz. However, they managed to make it work by having Yaz actively call out the Doctor's behaviour, so hopefully she's going to learn and grow from this. And with the universe seemingly coming to an end with no chance of stopping it, the Doctor is very much humbled into putting her obsession to one side. One thing that did kind of bug me was the fact that the character I mentioned earlier, the Doctor didn't really seem to take much interest in this new person apparently already knowing her. Since Yaz is now, or at least for most of the story, the only companion, she now has an opportunity to have a more active role in the story and more developed personality and prepared to be in conflict with the Doctor. It's a shame that they seem to have dropped the fact that she's a police officer completely and that she no longer has the job, which kind of makes her having that a wasted plot point, much like Mel and her computer programming skills. It's interesting that they're going the direction that Yaz might be regretting her decision to stay with the Doctor, which might be what ultimately leads to her leaving. Now on to our final and brand new character, Dan. Now, in a couple of other videos, I've discussed how I really hope that at some point the new series goes a bit more experimental with the companions and maybe gives us a historical one for the future. I know the chances of something like an alien is incredibly unlikely due to issues concerning prosthetics and all that, but I think the whole excuse of relatability or things like that just kind of fall flat, and at this point it's just kind of a bit stale. That doesn't mean these types of companions I'm necessarily going to write them off. It's just I'm looking for something outside of the traditional 20th century companion which we've been doing since 2005. Yes, we've technically got a couple of exceptions, but as I said before, you could easily make the argument, and some people do, that they aren't officially companions. If they're good, then I'll probably end up liking them. I mean, Bill is one of my favourite companions. It's just I won't find them as interesting because it's very much covering ground that is long since been trampled over. Now, in the case of Dan, I think the prospect of just having John Bishop as himself as a companion is a fairly fun idea. Having this very much down-to-earth sort of character be placed in these very extreme circumstances, it is a pretty good idea for a companion. I'd probably do something like this if I had the opportunity to be showrunner. So while I do like Dan, I kind of wish that they'd gone a more experimental route, since Yaz very much fills the present-day Earth companion quota. I get the feeling he's sort of like a last-minute replacement for Graham, as it's possible that Bradley Walsh was originally intended to be in this series, or at least it was up in the air on whether or not he'd be staying. But for now, I think he'll be a fun addition, and I just hope that eventually they'll break the chain, as it were. Dan is also able to have a fun dynamic with Yaz, due to them being very much from opposing cities, Sheffield and Liverpool. I'll wrap this review up by talking about some of the references I spotted. We first get a reference to Nitro 9. We get to see the 10th Doctor's mallet he repeatedly used to smash the console with, which ends up becoming important towards the end of the episode. Jodie ends up doing impressions of both the 12th and 7th Doctors, and of course we have the Weeping Angels and the Sontarans. If you're worried about the Sontarans being all serious, don't worry, there is some bad jokes at their expense. And I kind of like their kind of plot point that while everyone else is panicked about the Flux tearing the universe apart, they're actively excited and looking forward to the conflict, fighting the end of the universe itself. Not going to say much more. If you want to, you can check it out on iPlayer. I hope you enjoyed this review, and let me know what you thought of the Halloween Apocalypse. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week for War of the Sontarans. But before that comes out, you can always check out my Big Finish reviews, which come out on Fridays. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.